Greetings, YouTube universe. Jerry with IMO and My Opinion, and together we get to explore the wonderful world of audio and video. In this week's video, we're going to be discussing purchasing your first turntable and maybe purchasing a second turntable if you're so inclined to do so, if you already have a turntable. Most of the reviews I've seen talk about new versus vintage. Well, I've added a third category to that, and that is old, and I'll be giving you my definitions of each of those categories. Also in the reviews, they tend to discuss pros and cons. I am adding a third category to that as well, which I'm going to call debatable. So let's get on with this. Defining new turntables is really not required. They're new, they're in a box, you buy them from the manufacturer, you read the instructions, and you hook it up and listen to your music. Vintage turntables are a different story. These are turntables that have stood the test of time due to their build quality. They sound good and they look good. They have that nice vintage appeal, really nice vintage look. Old turntables are a totally different ballgame altogether. I would define old turntables as, for lack of a better word, junk. These were your bargain brand turntables that were packaged either in a system or that you could buy very cheaply. They don't perform that well, not the best thing for your records. Reliability is not that good, and they don't look that good. They're plasticky, they're pretty much garbage. There are actually a few turntables that straddle that line between vintage and old, and we'll discuss those later. First, let's discuss the pros of owning a new turntable. Of course, you get a warranty with it, modern technology, updated looks, parts will be available for quite some time, servicing, etc. And some you can get with a preamp, so you don't have to buy a separate preamp to go into your receiver if your receiver does not have a built-in preamp. And you can use a lot of the new ones to digitize your music if that's what you want to do. Let's now discuss the pros of a vintage turntable. Some of the pros of the vintage turntable are nostalgia. What else? Nostalgia. And finally, let's discuss the very few pros of an old turntable. On occasion, you can find one that is adequate enough to play your records for a cheap enough price, kind of get you into the vinyl world if you care to do so, but you really need to be careful. You really need to know what you're looking for. Preferably, it would be a turntable that maybe someone gives you or you find for a good deal at like a Goodwill or some sort of a thrift store. So that's it as far as the pros of those three categories. Okay, so the cons or the negatives of new turntables could be the appearance. If you like the vintage appearance, then you may not like the looks of a new turntable. Other than that, I can't think of any cons to a new turntable. Cons or negatives to an old turntable would be you will probably need a phono preamp if your receiver does not have a phono preamp. You're going to have a lot of age, wear and tear. You'll probably need a new stylus, maybe a new cartridge. Chances are parts are not available. So even if you buy a vintage turntable and it says it's been gone through or revitalized or whatever they want to say, chances are it's not with new parts. So you run the risk of buying an expensive vintage turntable and it could last for years, it could last for a month. The other current issues with vintage turntables are odor. You could buy a nice vintage turntable and it's going to smell like grandma's attic. Could smell like mothballs for all you know. It's probably going to need some sort of work. Anything that old, even though they're built very well, is going to need some sort of work. I'm not against vintage turntables. I have two of them. I'm against the outrageous pricing, and we'll see that later on in this video. It is just hideous what they're trying to charge for quote-unquote vintage turntables. So that's why I'm very much against vintage turntables or purchasing them, simply because of the greed involved. Everybody's trying to get on this nostalgia kick. Oh, buy a vintage turntable. They're going to sound better. They're built like tanks. We'll cover that later also. Regarding old turntables, very, very simple. The negative is that they are probably junk. They're not the best thing for your record collection, and if you're going to get into this hobby, get something halfway decent. So that would be my advice regarding those. Next up is the hotly contested debatable area. This has been a topic of contention for many years, and the two main arguments involve sound and build quality. Now, we're not going to be including old turntables because, as we discussed, they're pretty much junk. Sound. Well, sound is subjective. A lot of people maintain that simply because it's a vintage turntable, it's going to sound better. I found that is not actually the case. I have a vintage dual 1229 stock equipped with an M91 ED cartridge. I also have a new Fluence RT85, which is equipped with a Ortofon 2M Blue cartridge. Both turntables are stock, and I've run them both through. This is actually the name of this preamplifier. The name of the company is Schit, SCHIIT, and I ran it through a Schit Mani preamp into my Pioneer Elite receiver. Playing the same record on the dual and then playing it on the RT85, the RT85 is leaps and bounds above in quality. And that's only a $500 turntable into a $150 preamp. So for $650, I'm getting better sound than one of the most coveted turntables of all time, the dual 1229. As far as build quality goes, okay, yeah, the dual 1229 is built very good. The RT85 is very well put together. It's a very simple turntable. You have a motor, you have a platter, you have a tone arm, and you have a speed control. They look to be a good quality. On the other side of, the vintage side, yes, they've been proven. Quality of new turntables has yet to be proven, so that's pretty much takes care of that argument. And the dual is 45 to 48 years old. It was made between 1972 and 1975. So I hope that helps you in understanding the difference between those two categories. I felt it would be a good idea to list a few turntables in different categories. The first one will be new turntables that have a preamp built into it, new turntables without a preamp, vintage turntables, and old turntables. And I'm also going to cover a couple turntables that are somewhere between old and vintage. I hope that's going to be helpful for you. New turntables that include a preamp include the Audio-Technica AT-LP120X USB, the TIAC TN400S, the Audio-Technica AT-LP60X. This is a minimum entry-level turntable. It's only $99, but it does very well. You have the Fluence RT81, again, a very, very good turntable, bang for the buck turntable. There's a Denon DP300F, and then there's the U-Turn Orbit Plus. All these include a preamp, so you could just run it directly into your stereo. If you don't have a stereo, you can run them directly to any set of powered speakers you might have, computer speakers or any kind of monitors you might want to use. And those turntables are all under $500 and perform very well. Great entry-level turntables. You'd be very happy with either one of those. Good turntables under $500 that do not include a preamp include the Project T1, the Project Carbon, the Music Hall MMF 1.3, the U-Turn Orbit Plus. You can get the U-Turn Orbit Plus with a preamp, but you can get it without also, as we saw in the last listing. And my favorite, which I own, is the Fluence RT85. I love the Fluence RT85. It was my choice because it was the most bang for the buck. And it came with an Ortofon Blue 2M cartridge. So at any rate, those are some good turntables under $500. Popular vintage turntables include the Thorns TD160, the Lynn Sondic LP12, the Garrard 301 or 401, a Dual 1229, the Realistic Lab 400, and the Realistic Lab 500. Now, the Realistic Lab 400 and 500 are kind of near the bottom end of vintage turntables. I have the 400. It performs very well. I used to have the 500 before I gave it away back in the day, and it performed very well. It's obviously not as good as a Thorns or a Dual, but they do perform very well if you can find one, again, at a reasonable price. Old turntables to avoid include the following: the Garrard 770, the Garrard 640, and this hideous one, the BSR 310. I used to have a BSR 310. It was the first turntable I bought in like I don't know, 1971 or 1972. And it played my records for years, but of course I started tweaking sound even back then, and I had to adjust the spring in it so it would track lighter. It was a piece of garbage. A little 10-inch platter instead of a 12-inch platter. It was noisy. Just avoid it. And what this guy is charging, this is something that should really be in, I'm sorry, a garbage pile. You don't charge 35 bucks plus shipping and handling for a turntable that was a piece of garbage in the first place, and now you're trying to sell it because it's a vintage turntable. It is not. It's garbage. Don't buy one. I don't mean to be that strong about it, but I'm getting a little tired of some of these eBay sellers out there. A couple that are kind of borderline that you might want to consider include the Garrard SL72B and the Garrard SL95. My dad had an SL72. It treats your records pretty good. If you can find one in good condition for 30 to maybe 50 bucks, that's been degunked, I would say, because these things really were greased up, and the grease in there gets real heavy. It gunks up, and a lot of the functions don't work properly, so that really has to be cleaned out. So 30, 50 bucks tops. Same with the 95. The other one that you can see here is the BSR 810. Most BSRs were garbage. This was BSR's attempt to be like a, Dual or something like that. It's probably a decent turntable, one of the few decent ones. I probably wouldn't spend more than 50 bucks on something like that too, if you can find one in really good condition. So I hope that's helpful as far as turntables. We're going to discuss a few other things next. So let's discuss the prices of some of these turntables. The first one I'm going to bring up to you is the Realistic Lab 400. Again, I have one. You can see how much they're asking for eBay on this one. I bought mine years ago when they were selling anywhere between $250 to $400. I got it from Craigslist for 75 bucks, and I think I've had it 5, 6, 7 years. However, it is an old turntable, and every once in a while, the speed will slow down. So I have to take it apart, I have to oil the motor, and put it back together. I've done that twice, but I'm able to do that, so I was aware of that when I purchased it, and there you go. I would never pay $200, $300, $400 for a 40-year-old turntable. Same with this following one. This is the Realistic Lab 500. Again, I had one of these as well. It's a great turntable. I miss it, wish I still had it, but no, it's not worth that amount of money. There's just no way. You can buy new turntables for that amount or a little bit more and get something much better. Now, you can also see that someone's trying to sell a couple dual 1229 turntables that don't function. I picked mine up for $260 off Craigslist probably about another 4 or 5 years ago. But of course it is used, so it does have two issues. One, when you lift up the queuing lever, it doesn't stay up. That's actually fine because I usually listen to my records all the way through. I also bought one of, you'll call it a drop-down spindle. You can stack your records. I know you vinyl purists don't stack your records. Well, I got some old records that I would like to stack and listen to that way, but it doesn't work, so I can't do that. Am I going to have it fixed? I might try to fix it eventually. I just bought some rubber rejuvenator. I'm going to go in there and clean that up, clean up a couple more parts in there. But other than that, I'm playing it as is. It plays just great, and I really enjoy it. So anyhow, that's that for the Dual 1229. What really gets me are the prices of things like these Thorns. Look at this Thorn TD 160. They're asking $36.99 plus $255 to ship it. You're going to spend $3,954 on a 50-year-old turntable when you can buy a VPI Prime Scout brand new for only $2,500. You're out of your mind to spend that kind of money on an old turntable. Again, I'm not against vintage turntables. I'm kind of tired of the pricing of these things under the guise of it's vintage, it's better. It's not better. It's old. Okay? So that's just my opinion on that. And the other thing is, people out there, stop saying this and that turntable is built like a tank. This is a tank. This is a turntable. They don't look similar. So stop calling your turntables tanks. So anyhow, I hope that's helpful, and put your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think I'm a nutcase? Do you think vintage is the way to go? Do you think new is the way to go? Do you think an old $35 turntable is the way to go? Tell me what you think. I hope you all have a good time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.